Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. We're here with the Empire, going to be throwing in a community cast from the live patch. We've got Zardar here taking on Felcon, who has taken the Vampire Coast here. Felcon, I don't think necessarily enjoys playing Vampire Coast, from what I understand. I don't know, I could be wrong about that, but probably just a friendly practice here for Zardar. He is got a pretty decent Empire build here. 5 units of Huntsmen, lots of State Troop Infantry, Empire Knights, Boris up in the air, and a Bright Wizard with Fireball and Burning Head. Pretty good stuff. Nice wide Empire build, and honestly could be Midland themed. I mean, these are just regular Empire Knights. They're not like Reichsguard or anything, right? So totally could be just Midland. As for the Vampire Coast here, we've got deckhands and polearms, as you'd expect. Some pistol deck droppers, a couple of depth guard. The dual hand weapons, very good at cutting through state troops and other light units, light infantry units, that is. 4 scurvy dogs to provide some mobility, and we've also got the fire necrofex. A decent pick these days, can be a little bit risky against the Empire's range tools, but yeah, unfortunately, just out of melee range there. The charge animation for that thing, actually kind of funny, but should be able to get some damage in on some of these Empire Knights here, start to apply that leadership effect. Will likely make them rout. Empire Knights are pretty good, but they don't have the best leadership in the world. 70 is a decent base value, but it's not that much. You can kind of force some different effects onto them and route them pretty quickly. But that being said, these deck droppers are kind of being torn apart here by Huntsmen, and they are doing some great work here. I mean, granted, the deck droppers are pretty cheap, so it's not that great of value necessarily shooting at them with the Huntsman, but he does need to get rid of them, absolutely. Depth Guard coming in the front line here, though. They're going to start to just rip through these state troops. The state troops otherwise would obviously trade very well with the zombies here, but since there's just so many state troops, it's definitely going to take these Depth Guard a long time to cut through all of them. And in the meantime, the Empire is going to be able to get some damage across the board and other places, so good stuff so far. You can see the Necrofex able to stay online, though. Yeah, an initial engagement over here with some Empire Knights could have gone south, but so far Felcon's been doing a good job keeping his hounds online. Here, though, he does kind of take a charge a little bit. He's going to try and pull away from that engagement there. It's very important with Vampire Coast to keep your hounds online. Even though they're very cheap units, they're your only kind of mobility tool for pressure in your opponent's backline, so you need to try and keep them alive if you can. Gonna pull them away here. Likewise, Gallows Giant just fighting back-to-back with Noctilus. They're kind of two armor-piercing single entities that can fight reasonably well together. If Boris tries to dive Noctilus, I mean, that's not going to be a good idea in the first place because of his halberd anti-large and everything, but he tries to dive the Necrofex, which isn't a terrible idea. Then Noctilus can kind of come in and get some attacks on the side, but so far the Empire Knights have been doing a good job kind of ping-ponging back and forth around the battlefield, trying to keep these Huntsmen secure for the most part, and we do get a nice crossfire here from a number of Huntsmen on this unit of Depth Guard. Not the best AP values, and they're anti-large, right, so not necessarily meant to shoot at infantry, but just through pure volume of fire here, able to get some damage in. Granted, those Depth Guard already quite a few kills and about to rack up quite a few more there, so tough stuff. Boris drops down, though, getting some DPS on the Gallows Giant there before he needs to cut and run back up in the air. And the state troops are still fighting reasonably well. These Depth Guard here did lose some models. Looks like they're going to get some kills on those state troops there as well, though. And it's looking pretty dicey for the Empire. They are somewhat ahead on the balance of power, mostly because a lot of the zombie troops have been worn away at this point. There's just a handful of polearms left. That's kind of more or less what you'd expect. Thankfully, though, Noctilus can keep some summons, kind of sustaining himself here a little bit. If he can keep a terror route going, could potentially just force a lot of these Empire troops off the field through attrition, but doing a good job here, kind of chasing with the Scurvy Dogs, chasing those Empire Knights off, and also baits another one of these units of Empire Knights away from this engagement, where they could be coming in here and like rear charging these Depth Guard, for example. But the Huntsmen are going to be very good, even with tattered numbers and in a situation where they can't necessarily all get firing at the same time. Just any volleys they can get in here, especially on the Gallows Giant. That 70 armor is okay, but it's really not enough to hold up against the Huntsmen with their anti-large bonus, and they have pretty good base AP values anyway. And just because of the way the damage scaling works, you're only going to get, a couple points of mitigation there from that armor. So, yeah, pretty good stuff overall. Nice fireball glancing off of, I believe that was glancing off of Noctilus's head there. And the Empire Knights do need to be careful. There are still some very cost-effective zombie halberds on the field here. But if the Empire Knights can stay away from them, which, I mean, they obviously have the speed to do so, they should be able to stay alive and stay healthy into this late game here. You can see, though, that other Empire Knight finally was able to catch up, bail out this third. So 3 units of Empire Knights still online, pretty good stuff. The Hounds are just about crumbled here. There's that 1 unit that crumbled earlier. This unit's just about down here, and these 2 units as well, probably just about done, but nice bombardment from Noctilus on that Bright Wizard there. This unit of Depth Guard as well, just about up to its healing cap, and almost 200 kills, what, 176 and climbing there, so we'll come in close for these Blood Marines. That's essentially kind of what they are. They're like Blood Knight Marines, right? Just dismounted Blood Knights with either dual hand weapons or halberds. I honestly, you know, there are, in older Total War games and some of the historical ones, you can dismount your mounted troops, and there aren't a ton of situations where you should, but there are, especially in like Empire Total War, where you have Dragoons that come in larger unit sizes. They're not great in melee as cavalry, but you can actually dismount them to like hold choke points and kind of use them as infantry, or just use them in campaign as well, like cavalry-only armies would have a faster campaign movement speed, right? So you could put together these stacks with like, you know, some proper cavalry units, some kind of quote-unquote line troops, if you will, as like Dragoons or other higher model count cavalry units, and sort of use them in that way. But in Total War Warhammer, of course, because of the way it works, the cavalry entity model is not able to really dismount, but it still would be cool, I think, to get some dismounted variants of some various units. Bretonia, I don't know how loreful that is. People can debate about that in the comments, but I believe for the Empire, the various knightly orders for the Empire would occasionally fight dismounted, especially if the situation called for it, like given a certain type of terrain or something. So, you know, maybe that's something they could look into in the future. I don't know. There's just so much time left for Game 1 and Game 2, I feel. It could really add a lot of things. I mean, Game 2, we'll see. It does sort of feel like we're nearing the end of the development cycle. It's hard to say. I mean, with this new DLC, which, granted, has got me very excited. I'm not going to talk a ton about it in today's video, obviously, because that's not really the focus of this video, but I'll just say this. I am very excited, not only for this DLC, but for the future of Total War Warhammer in general. But anyway, where was I even going with this? Yeah, dismounted knights. Hopefully someday we can get something like that. That would be pretty neat, I think. Some elite human infantry that aren't just, you know, great swords, because if you think about it, neither of the human factions really have like proper elite infantry, and it would just be kind of cool to see something like that, especially given, like, you know, if you look at like English knights, especially in history, there are other, you know, occasions, especially, you know, towards the later end of the medieval period, where you have very heavy infantry fighting, and you know, like super elite either mercenaries or, you know, different things. So I don't know, maybe a Southern Realms faction someday. I know a wing and a prayer for Kislev. I don't know if they would end up having elite infantry at all, but, you know, I guess they could potentially. If it's a roster that CA kind of has to make up, then they could potentially, I guess, get some elite infantry. But Boris is going to come in, try and finish things off here. The Vampire Coast getting worn away. These Depth Guard making their stand in the forest here with Noctilus, but just not enough troops at this point, with especially with Boris on the field being so healthy. I mean, Noctilus can come in and do some damage, but just with all of this infantry support here, and with the Depth Guard just about crumbled away, should be able to take things home for the Empire. It's actually, the balance of power for once is not favoring the Vampire Coast, which is kind of funny to me. But anyway, knocked you boys in here. Ooh. Looks like that fireball hit a tree. It'd actually be kind of funny if the trees caught on fire in this game. I believe in, what is it, Attila Total War, you can actually, it doesn't really burn the trees necessarily, but you can kind of burn like the foliage off of them. That's an interesting effect. Terrain destruction in Total War Warhammer, I think you could get a little bit crazy, you know, with some wild ideas, but I don't know. That's really necessarily the focus that they want to have on the game. I mean, if you think about, like, the tabletop, I'm getting way off topic now, but a spell like Awakening of the Wood would actually, like, place a little spot of woods on the table, right? So I don't know if that's something that's even possible for them to program into the current iteration of the Total War engine, but, you know, if they hang on to this IP, which I'd imagine that because Games Workshop has had so much success with Total War Warhammer, I'd imagine that they're going to want to continue this partnership with Creative Assembly, hopefully. You know, maybe years down the line, like we're talking decades potentially, if they come back and revisit something like this, Maybe some terrain modification, or I don't know, even like an Age of Sigmar RTS maybe someday far down the line. Who knows? That's like, you know, super speculation, but just having some kind of terrain modification in the Fantasy Total War would be interesting, certainly. But anyway, way off topic in this video from the actual battle, but a very fun battle nonetheless. Big thanks Zardar for sending that one in. Some excellent burning heads also that I didn't catch from that Bright Wizard. But yeah, state troops, as you would expect, trading well into some zombies. A lot of them getting cut up though by those depth guard, both of them racking up a ton of kills. Gallows Giant, it's a pretty good unit, but can be a risky pick. The 5 Huntsmen, definitely a pretty hard counter to that. Or if Noctilus were to come on a Necrofex as well, obviously. In terms of like how else you can really go for effective rush builds, because it looks like obviously that's what Felcon was going for here. Against the Empire, you know, it's interesting. I don't know, the Gallows Giant is something I would probably take. You guys have seen me take that quite a bit on this channel. In an actual competitive sense, if you're trying to rush, I might actually go with, like, I don't know, like Silostra, honestly, and another, just because the heavy armor of the Crab is going to be a little bit better against the Huntsman, and then take a Vampire Caster separately. Plus, the Night Summon is going to be pretty good at cleaning up these Empire, like, Huntsmen and stuff in the backline. Also gives you at least some kind of extra mobility unit and cavalry to try and contest against, like, Empire Knights and stuff, so yeah, Celestra, I think, kind of a little bit of a hidden gem here. Granted, she is a little bit vulnerable if the Empire goes super heavy into, like, mass missiles and cannons and stuff, but, you know, it's a bit of an interesting one. It definitely can turn into a shootout depending on which player scales more heavily into the powder-type units, but a very fun matchup nonetheless. Big thanks again to Zardar for submitting that one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.